Hey guys, it's Lizzie. So I have a really fun story time of something super embarrassing that happened to me recently, and 300 plus people experienced it. So I'm gonna tell the story, and then afterwards we can go into any questions that you guys want to talk about: Catholicism, bipolar, COVID, anything you guys want to talk about. But we're gonna explain what happened first. I was freaking out, but I completely solved it, so most people will never know what happened. So yesterday I uploaded a video and it was a room tour showing all of the icons and statues and church art rosaries that I own. It's been super requested. You guys loved it so much. It was also a sponsored video, so I was working with a company for it, which is where everything happens. So after it's been up for I think like 30 minutes to an hour, my fiance texts me and he's like, there's a mistake in your video. And I was like, no way. Because when I edit, I watch through every single clip over and over and over again. I do like a bajillion watch throughs. Even once I export it, I watch it through. I make sure the music isn't too loud. I make sure there's like zero mistakes. I've been doing YouTube in June. It will have been 11 years. So he said that there was a clip in the video where I failed to speak. So I was right over here showing my icons and I was holding my camera and I said, up here are my icons. Here's my icons. Here's my icons. Like I was almost like stuttering on my words and I said the same sentence 4 times. So my fiance was like, at first I thought my computer was broken and the internet was messing up and it just kept doing the same clip over and over again. So I go to my computer and I watch the YouTube video and there's literally a clip of me saying the same line stuttering. It's like a 7-second part of the video. And I was just completely stunned and appalled. And I was just thinking and thinking and thinking, how could that possibly happen? Because I am so detail oriented with editing. But I had been really, really sick the past like 4 days. I don't think I had COVID, maybe I did, but I was really out of it and exhausted. So I thought maybe because I was really sick, that's why all this happened. I just wasn't in like the correct mindset. So then I keep thinking about this and thinking about this, and I'm analyzing whether or not I should re-upload the video. I really didn't want to because there were already a lot of comments and everything. But then it dawned on me what had happened. So I had uploaded the video for the company who I was working with, and then I'd emailed them and had them do a watch through so they could approve the video. So in between when I uploaded it for them to approve, I was working on my thumbnail. So a lot of YouTubers, and I do this sometimes too, they'll just like pose for the camera for the thumbnail. But what I do sometimes is I just get a clip, like a 0.millisecond clip within the video, and then that's the picture I use, and then I create my thumbnail. So I really liked the part when I was like this next to the icons because I was kind of like smiling excitedly. So what I did is I pulled the clip over a little bit to try to make sure that I get the perfect pose. And then I did Command Z, Command Z, Command Z to get it back to how it was. But I must have missed one of the Command Z's. So the company gets back to me and they say they want me to add in a text of the promo code within the last part of the video. So I edit that in and then I re-export it. Meanwhile, I'd opened the clip more for the thumbnail. So then for some reason, like this has never happened before, but I didn't watch the video on QuickTime Player once it was exported. I just uploaded it. And I don't know what I was doing that I didn't think to watch it through, but maybe it was because I was exhausted because I'd already done like the 20-minute watch through and then they wanted me to change something. I don't know why I didn't watch through it. I was maybe too excited or something. But I remember like a year ago, I uploaded a video. It was about if Protestants will be in heaven or hell. And in that video, for some reason, and I'd never started doing this until a year ago, for some reason, once it exported into QuickTime, there was like 1 minute where it was just black and the video wasn't there at all. It was just black for a minute. And I remember it was premiering, and so everyone was like, what happened? Is my internet down? What's going on? And it turned out that the way it exported, it just like left out a minute. So ever since then, before I upload videos, I rewatch it in QuickTime Player, like every single frame, and paying attention to the audio to make sure that something is not off. And so for some reason this time I just didn't watch it through, and probably because I'd already watched it through so many times and I was like, oh, I just added in text at the end, like it's fine. But what happened is YouTube created an editor feature probably about like 6 months to a year ago. I've never used it before. And so I was like, wait, what if it's possible for me to edit out a portion of it? So I'm Googling, I'm watching like YouTube tutorials about the editor feature. And guess what? I was able to get rid of those 7 seconds where I was like, this is my icons. That part, I was able to completely get rid of it because the editor feature, you can clip out parts of the front, parts at the back, or you can cut out a part in the very middle. It also lets you blur things within the video. So I was so pumped. I watched a tutorial. It took me like 5 minutes to figure out because it's like completely new software I've never done before. But I was able to get off that part, and you can't tell it's not perfect because there's music in it, and so you can tell the music kind of changes, the background music, but I'm so happy. That's like the first mistake I've had in a YouTube video in so long. So, anyways, only like 300 plus people experienced that, and no one had commented it because you guys are so sweet and nice and aren't gonna tell me my flaws. But yeah, that happened. And then another thing that has been happening recently is I did a live stream. My last live stream was all about how I got vaccinated. And during the live stream, a lot of people were like, I can't believe you're saying this. I'm unsubscribing from you. And in the comment section too, more people are unsubscribing. And I was texting some of my friends about it, and I was just like so confused because anti-vax people who don't vaccinate their babies and young children and everything is like a very small percentage of the population. So it was just like stunning to me how many people will like cut someone off for getting the COVID vaccine. Not even like, oh, I don't respect this person anymore. Like, oh, I won't watch their COVID vaccine video, but literally like cut someone off over it. So I was pretty stunned. So that's my story time about what has happened recently. So I'm going to read through your comments and we can talk about whatever you want. Also, I started wearing blush again. I haven't worn blush since like 2016. I don't know why. I feel like contouring with bronzer and highlight just became so trendy, and I think a lot of people stopped wearing blush. But recently, I don't know what I was watching, but I don't think it was a makeup tutorial. Maybe it was just a YouTuber and I was like paying attention to how their makeup was done. But yeah, I got a new one, and it's not like a powder, it's like a cream. So it's really interesting. Also, right there, I should be like here, but that's my ring light. It's like reflecting on it. Whenever I do Zoom for work, a lot of times people can like see my ring light. But I don't know. I feel like it's unprofessional for you guys to see it. Okay. Also, I'm starting a church council series on my channel because my next video, I'm almost completely finished with the script. So it's about the Theotokos church dogma about Mary, how we call her Theotokos, and it super involves the Council of Ephesus. So I was reading up on the Council of Ephesus, and then I was like, wait, what if I do a series on like the first few ecumenical councils in the early church? So I'm literally going to do a series on that because I'm always like running out of content. So I'm really, really excited about that. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. I know I was gone from YouTube for so long. I've considered just making a like entire video explaining it, but I was really sick. My health insurance, I had some issues with. It's completely my fault, but I was on my family health insurance for a long time. In the US, if you're from a different country, we don't have government healthcare or socialized medicine. We have private healthcare. So a lot of people for their jobs, one of the benefits of having the job is they enroll you in the company healthcare and they choose a private company and then everyone's enrolled. So there's also a rule where people are allowed to stay on their family health insurance plan until they're 26. So basically, at the beginning of this year, I had to get on private health insurance. So I researched a lot of it, and I had to figure out that like my psychiatrist and medications were like approved by the company. Unfortunately, one wasn't. I couldn't find like any plans that accepted Vraylar. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go off of one on my bipolar meds. But I had set it on automatically taking money out of my account every single month to pay for the health insurance. And I'm not someone who every month goes through my entire bank and looks at my account. Maybe this is like a huge wake up call that I should be someone who's always looking at my bank account. Obviously, I'll see how much money is in my account, but I don't go through all of my bills and transactions. So apparently, the money to pay January had been paid, but the past 2 months, money had not been coming out of my account. So I went to the pharmacy to pick up my medication, and they like refused to give it to me. They're like, "You can pay 1,000 out of pocket for your bipolar meds," and I was like, "No way! Who has that amount of money to just like pay out of pocket?" So basically, once I paid my bill for my health insurance, it still wasn't going through that it was paid. And there were probably like 10 days because of all of this when I was completely off my medication. And so I was going through withdrawal. I was having some manic symptoms. I don't even know how to explain withdrawal to people who don't have bipolar disorder, but you just feel like completely out of reality. You feel exhausted, so many nightmares. So that was going on for a while. And then I had side effects going back on my medication. So it was like 2.5, 3 weeks where I was like so sick from that. And then I was fine for 5 days. And then I got my COVID vaccine. I was sick for 24 hours from that. And then I got another sickness after that. So it's just been like a month basically of on and off being sick. So that's why I haven't been here. So it's super sad. A lot of bigger YouTubers, after doing YouTube consistently for a while, they just like quit YouTube. And I never wanted to be someone who did that. So, did Christ send people to the doctor? Yes, the church has always been super pro building hospitals and scientific research. If you study the Middle Ages, it was Catholics who were building the hospitals and the university system and taking care of people. So, absolutely. Cooper says, "Hi, I just got diagnosed this past June after a manic episode and have been going through a depressive episode for months. I've been hospitalized 3 times. That's so intense. I've never been hospitalized before for my bipolar, which I'm so grateful because it like really scares me thinking of being in a psych ward. I'm sure it's way more chill than like the media portrays it or I imagined, but I've just never wanted to do that before." Bridget says, "Hey Lizzie, what's your favorite prayer?" My favorite prayer is the glory be to the Father and to the Son and to the Holy Spirit. And I always cross myself when I do it. As it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. 5 Kai Dragon. I was recently just considering on whether or not I should possibly become a nun one day. That's so sweet. I would definitely talk to a spiritual director and be in contact with someone who is a nun. And I'm pretty sure you can even stay with them for like a weekend or something to get a feel of what it's like. Joshua Neese says, "The USCCB, which is the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, for so long, I thought USCCB was the Council of Catholic Bishops, but it's the Conference of Catholic Bishops. So the USCCB said it was okay to receive the vaccine. Some people didn't because of its connection to aborted stem cell research. So a lot of research regarding vaccinations go back to decades ago, research on an aborted fetus. And because of that, a lot of people completely reject the vaccines and scientific research coming from that. But our bishops, our church authority has said that it's totally fine to take the vaccine. And I think that in the US, the reason people are against it is because our country was founded on rebellion, on rebelling against the political authorities, the religious authorities. That was like our entire government. And so it makes sense to me that the US doesn't jive well with obeying church authority because our culture is just rebellion and disobeying authority. And so a lot of Catholics in the US dissent on major church teaching. And I think people who are not wanting to get the vaccine in the US, I'm sure that if we did a study of Catholics around the world, it would not be common for Catholics compared to the general population to be more against getting vaccinated. I think it's like a clearly American thing because of our culture. But I've actually found it really easy to change completely. And I'm at a point now where if church authority is saying something, even if I disagree with it, even if I don't understand, even if it messes with me emotionally, I'm still going to obey and accept church teaching from our bishops and from the Pope and from church councils and church documents. So I was able to flip really easily from being like the American wanting to overthrow authority, and I completely changed. So I don't think there are many excuses for not changing in that regard. Pancho Villa, the idea of cloistered nuns is strange. I don't think it's that weird. Even someone who didn't grow up Catholic, I've always heard about it. I think one of my biggest things when I was younger and hearing about Catholicism, I thought it was horrible that there were Catholics who were going off on their own because I thought Christians are supposed to be in the world evangelizing to people. But once what I realized is that they're praying the entire time for the entire world and the entire church. And prayer is so intensely powerful. I think we completely undermine it so much. And so they're doing a huge service in evangelization by praying for everyone. So it's not totally useless and disconnected from the world, the work they're doing. Elizabeth says, "You also sneezed in the middle," which is referring to my video where I super messed up in. So I actually intentionally wanted to keep the sneeze in because I thought it was funny. My fiance also pointed that out. He's like, "You messed up here too." But I just thought it was funny, and I was really sick at the time. I don't know if you guys could tell by the way I was talking, but I was like sneezing, coughing, congested, sore throat. One day I woke up and it was like so painful how much my throat hurt. So I just was eating a lot of ginger tea, cough drops, and it worked. Rose Angelia says, "Hey Lizzie, fellow 16-year-old Catholic YouTuber here. You're an inspiration." Aw. Joshua says, "I'm on Medicare, which is government health insurance. However, you must be on SSDI disability for at least 2 years or be 65 years old. However, I'm 31 years old." Yeah, that was like a really big thing in the election where a lot of the Democrats were pushing Medicare for all and wanting to allow everyone to be on a state form of healthcare. And it seems like none of that is going to happen because Biden is so conservative. I was reading an article, the USCCB was like going after Biden because he's not letting in more immigrants and refugees. And it's just hilarious to me that everyone was calling him socialist and he turned out to be so conservative and not at all with how Democrats generally are. So I think he's like disappointing. Like, it's just crazy to me that like people think the Catholic Church is so conservative and they're more liberal than Biden is in certain areas. I just think it's really, really bizarre. Okay. My rosary, Joshua says, "My rosary was free and it was from my home parish." Yeah, so many parishes give out rosaries. I think it's really beautiful. A lot of times it's people from the church who created them. Divine says, "I was thinking that you're 25 or somewhere in your 20s." Yes, I'm 26 years old. One of my best friends was referring, we're the same age, was referring to us as being in our late 20s. And I was like, no, up until 27, it's considered mid 20s. I don't want to be told I'm in my late 20s. I know I was talking last live stream how the past, when I turned 22 and 23, I was freaking out about it and I didn't want to get older. But 24, 25 have been totally chill birthdays. But I do think once I turn 30, that will be really, really weird. But I will be married by then and probably have children. So I'll feel normal. You know what I mean? Not that people who have kids later aren't, but I feel like those are basic markers in society where if you already have that going on, I think it's less scary. My parents, though, they got married in their 30s and they had my sister and I. My mom was 36 and 38, and they have such an amazingly stable marriage. So I'm all for waiting to marry someone and not settling and being with someone who you really connect with. So I think getting married later is a really good way of decreasing divorce. So definitely don't settle in relationships. The snip says, I keep hearing rumors that the Pope supports abortion. Is that true? Absolutely not. Maybe don't listen to rumors regarding Pope Francis. There's always crazy media about him that's just making up things and making the Catholic Church look like it's changing its theology with Pope Francis. So, completely, I blame the media. A lot of people blame Pope Francis. I blame the media. Daughter of El Eloin, any tips for those beginning the journey to Catholicism, aka me? So I recommend downloading the Word on Fire app, which is by Bishop Barron. You have to pay for it, but I think just like how you pay for Netflix, like it's a streaming app, and I think you'll learn so much from it without having to purchase the entire series. You'll save so much money. So on it, they have a Catholicism series and a pivotal players series, which goes in depth on a lot of the saints. And that's what we watched at my RCIA. And so you're kind of like doing RCIA before RCIA, and you learn a lot about church history and philosophy of Catholicism and theology. You learn so much. So I recommend downloading the Word on Fire app on your phone and watching it. I learned so much from that. And Bishop Barron also has a YouTube channel with hundreds of videos, and he's talked about so many topics. I also have over 100 videos on Catholic theology. I have an entire playlist on it. So just YouTube search Lizzie's Answers Catholic playlist, and then you can go through that, and any topic that you're interested in, you can learn from. And another resource that I really recommend is a Catholic encyclopedia. It's free, it's online, it's called New Advent. And on it, they have loads of early church saints' writings for free. But I think if you're new to Catholicism, a really important thing is to just use the actual encyclopedia. So for some reason, the search feature on New Advent is pretty bad. So I just use Google. So I'll type New Advent and then whatever topic I want to know about. So New Advent, Mary. New Advent, Purgatory. New Advent, Council of Nicaea. Any Catholic topic, just Google with the phrase New Advent and the articles will come up. It's like Wikipedia, but legit for Catholicism. So that's where I've learned so much from. A lot of people are constantly asking like what books to read, but honestly, so many things are free online for all of us to access. Hi says, I like your username. Someone below is like, hi. How long did it take you on your journey to become Catholic? So I started doing a lot of thorough research into the early church and different forms of Christianity in March of 2017. And then I begun RCIA in August of 2017, and then I was confirmed in March 2018. So it was about an entire year when I started researching into the church and then going through the official class to be confirmed and become fully part of the church and participate in the sacraments of confession and the Eucharist. So I would say my overall journey to Catholicism was a lot longer, though. I gradually started changing my mind on things in high school and college. Looking back, I see myself gradually changing on so many things. But when I was like self-aware that I was changing my theology, that was definitely in 2017. But I talk about a lot of this in my book, kind of starting in high school and like gradual things that were changing. Okay, I'm looking for more comments. Sky Dragon says, Hi Lizzie, I'm not sure what a spiritual director is. she was saying she's thinking of becoming a nun, but I'm considering becoming a nun, and I also don't know how to find a spiritual director. So go to your priest or anyone who is employed at your church, so like the director of RCIA or the parish secretary, and say that you want a spiritual director because you're discerning becoming a nun, and they will definitely point you to the right place. I know a lot of parishes are so big that you don't have a personal relationship with the priest, which I always forget when I'm giving advice and talking about Catholic things. Because my parish, I'm so close to my priest, and it's a lot smaller than most parishes. A lot of people, there's like hundreds of people at each mass, and there's like 5 masses every weekend. So I'm really grateful that I get to have a personal relationship with multiple priests in my life. Corey says, Protestant here studying Catholicism. It is interesting seeing points of view from the other side and anything I may have misunderstood. Yeah, it's really interesting learning what is the opposite of what you were taught growing up. What is the other positions? Hi says, is it true the apostles also got the keys and not just Peter, and that the rock in Matthew is referring to his confession of faith instead? So I was literally having a really intense Twitter dialogue back and forth about this. I feel like I don't want to talk about this because I don't want to give like a 1-minute explanation of this because it is really, really complicated. But a lot of church fathers and saints in like the first 4 centuries, and of course after, directly say that Peter is the rock, and the Greek for Peter, Petros, is rocky. That's like Jesus changed his name from Simon to Peter when he first met him, which was really common in the Old Testament, where God would change the names of people like Abram and Sarai to Abraham and Sarah, Joseph to Israel. God was just changing names if something really important is going to happen. So we see that with Peter from the moment that Jesus meets him. And a lot of Protestants will try to say that the rock means Peter's faith and therefore means everyone's faith, that the church is built on everyone's faith. But if you read what saints are saying about the passage in the early church, they are saying that it is the rock. But the part that is the most profound in Matthew 16 is when Jesus says, I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. I always viewed it as a cute metaphor talking about everyone's ability to evangelize, but really it's referring to an Old Testament position called the steward. So in the Davidic monarchy, which during the Annunciation, when the angel Gabriel is talking to Mary, she talks about how Jesus will be king in the line of David. And so it's important to go back to the Old Testament monarchy in which David was part of and see how they ran things, because Jesus is a successor of the monarchy. So at the time, there was a second in command position to the king called the steward, and he would walk around with physical keys around his shoulder, and he was in charge if the king ever left the city. And if the steward died, then a steward was picked to replace him. It was a position of succession. So when Jesus says, I will give you the keys of the kingdom, he's saying that Peter is going to be the steward, the first steward in Jesus' kingdom. So connecting all the dots and the metaphor, Jesus has gone away into heaven. He has left the steward to be in charge. And so once Peter dies, the steward position, the keys to the kingdom, the political position, is passed on to the next pope. And so that was what was really convincing to me. There's a book called Upon This Rock by Stephen Ray. The entire book just talks about Matthew 16, that passage. And he also talks about some of the controversies in the early church regarding how the Pope responded. And he talks about just church fathers talking about the role of the Roman bishop of the Pope in the early church. So that book is so helpful. And it's such an interesting book because a lot of the pages are like 90% footnotes. Like you'll be reading the book and like there's like 3 lines and then there's like 100 lines of footnotes. So it's pretty easy. It depends on how depth you want to go. You can just read it or you can read all of the footnotes. So if you're just reading the parts of the book and not the footnotes, you can get through it pretty fast. And then if there's parts that you want to go more in depth on, then you can read the footnotes. So it's so easy to read. I talked about it when I first came out about becoming Catholic and told everyone I was an RCIA in the spring of 2018. And then on Amazon, it went out of stock because so many people got the book because I mentioned it. So I think Ignatius was really happy about that. That's their publishing company. Eduardo says, pray for our president that he will change his view on abortion. Absolutely. I sometimes feel the passing of his son is a form of temporal punishment, but I pray he'd see that. Yeah, absolutely, because it's pretty shocking because Biden claims to be a practicing Catholic, but as Catholics, we have to want abortion to be illegal. We don't have the option where we can be personally against it, but not politically against it. We're literally not allowed to be politically wanting abortion to be legalized. So it's really dangerous for Biden's soul how he's dissenting from church teaching on a really important social topic. Okay, I'm looking for more comments. Oh, thank you for the donation. So the person changed their username to a lot of church fathers, and then it says, "We say Peter is the rock." Okay. Okay. There's a really weird comment. I don't understand. So it's from Joe Cool 97, and he says the girl I asked as a friend went wrong. Too many photos were taken. She wouldn't let me walk her to the door, and 2 weeks after that, I had a seizure in school. The ambulance picked me up. That's so scary. One of the girls who I knew in my college, we were both part of like interns for the church. We were both part of the campus ministry leadership. She would have seizures a lot. And never wanted them to call the ambulance because it would just be so expensive, and she'd like go to a hospital when she, was taking medication and working on it. But it was pretty scary because if you have a seizure when you're like walking down the stairs, or if your head hits something, you can really get hurt. So yeah, I know what that's like. There are so many times when we were like praying together as a community because it was really affecting her schoolwork and everything. So I have so much empathy. I was there a couple times when she had a seizure and was like recovering from them. So it was really scary for all of us. My lucky day. Do you ever feel like focus on the saints is taking away from my focus on Jesus? So it depends on what you mean by focus on saints. But when I hear that phrase, I think of reading their writings. And when you read the writings of the saints, they're all about Jesus and constantly quoting the Bible. And it still surprises me to this day because I was taught all of growing up that Catholics don't go by the Bible. So whenever I'm reading a saint's writings, they're constantly quoting Bible verse after Bible verse after Bible verse after Bible verse, and they're all obsessed with the Bible and obsessed with Jesus. And so I've never really seen a saint taking away the place of Jesus if you're reading their writings. I think if someone is praying and they only ask for the saint's intervention and not praying directly to Jesus, that's wrong. That's not okay. That's not what the Catholic Church is teaching. You should primarily be praying to Jesus and God and focusing on that relationship. And absolutely, you should be asking the spiritual help of so many Christians in heaven who can be part of our relationships with God and motivate us and be there for us. But primarily, we worship God and we pray to God. So I think it's possible that someone could let a saint take away their focus from Jesus, but I think that's super rare and it doesn't happen with 99.9% of Catholics. Google account says I was confirmed the same Easter vigil when you came into the church. That's so exciting. I cried so much at Easter Vigil this year because because I went through the whole conversion process, seeing other people receiving the sacraments for the first time. It's just so emotional. I was just like praying specifically for their lives, like so much of Mass. It was so powerful. Joe Cool 97, did you have a bad prom experience? I didn't go in 11th grade due to racism, and my senior year was horrible. Wow! My high school was super diverse. I lived in South Florida, which a lot of people view Florida as super conservative and super white. But in South Florida, in like Broward County, Miami, and Palm Beach, it's super diverse. And so We did not have a racism problem at my high school. That must be horrible, though. I know being a racial minority can be really, really hard. So I am so grateful that I got to live in such a diverse place for my really formative years where I got to see like all positions and understand different cultures and everything. But I can't imagine how hard that would be. But to answer more of the question, I went to prom, I don't know why I didn't go junior year, but I went senior year. I went with some of my friends. We rented a limo together and we did our photo shoot and we went to a steak restaurant. So I was a vegetarian at the time. So I just got like side dishes of vegetables as my meal. So it was a lot of fun. So my high school was an arts high school, and there was a ratio where there was like 70% women and 30% men, which is kind of weird because I mean, it's not that weird. I think, like, in our culture, when guys are seen as being more artistic, it's seen as, like, a negative thing. Like, they should be, like, analytical and studying technology and computer programming and math and stuff. And it's kind of, like, looked down upon if they're studying music or ballet or something. So, I think that's really messed up. And that was probably why we had barely any guys in my high school. But because of that, like, all of my friends were never in a relationship in high school. I never was. And so a lot of us didn't have dates to prom. We just like went with friends because there were like not guys at our high school. The guys who were, a lot of them were taken because, which should have made like a competitive essence with the women at my high school, but it wasn't that way at all. We were all very supportive of each other. Okay, I'm looking for more comments. Zadog8, do you equate racism with white? Absolutely not. I did not say that all white people are racist or equate racism with a certain ethnicity. Absolutely not. Even Black people say they are the most racist, and other groups agree. Okay, I've never heard the majority. I've actually never heard a Black person say that they're more racist than white people. I've never heard that one time. Maybe a couple people think that, but I've never heard that. Jesus is Lord. Hello from California, and God bless you all. I'm actually wearing a California t-shirt. It's a crop top, so I ordered it online, and it's like way more of a crop top than what I'm comfortable with. Because basically, if you're wearing high-waisted shorts or jeans and you wear a crop top, your stomach isn't showing at all. But this is like super crop top, so I mainly only wear it in my videos or live streams, or if I'm like hanging out around the house or with friends. Joshua says, I have had first dates, but I've never gotten on a second date. Oh, it will happen. I was talking earlier about how my parents met in their mid 30s, and they were both single for a lot of their 20s and 30s, and they have like the perfect relationship. They're super compatible. They're so completely happy in their relationship. They raised my sister and I in a very emotionally stable, economically stable environment. So don't all view it as a negative thing. If you've been single for a long time, I was single for the majority of high school and college, and I felt like I was able to fully devote myself to my studies and extracurriculars and what I was passionate about, and in developing lifelong friendships. So definitely don't view it as a negative thing if you're not in a relationship right now. There's so much time, and I think our country is just kind of obsessed with being in romantic relationships. Like, so much of the music and movies and books are all like elevating romantic relationships, when really it's just as important to be close with our family and our friends. My lucky day. I recently stopped being a vegan after 2.5 years. I honestly just couldn't handle it emotionally. Any thoughts on this? So, when I first went vegan, this is why I could never be a vegan YouTuber, because I would get so much hate for this, but I've been really open about it and honest about it. So when I first went vegan in August of 2015, I told myself I'm going to be 97 to 100% vegan. So I said I'm not going to be vegan all the time. I'm going to have cheat meals, not like scheduled, but if I'm with my family or my friends and they're cooking something and it has meat or dairy in it, I will eat it occasionally. And so a lot of people would say, "You're not a real vegan because you're like that." And so I just knew myself that when I went vegetarian in high school, I quit it like after a couple years just because it was so hard to never, ever, ever eat non-vegan food. And so I knew myself, and from that experience, that I would not stick to veganism if I said I had to do it 100% of the time. So it's been over 5 years now, and now I'm at the point where it's like 100%, but it took me a long time to get to this point, and I just think my friends really appreciate it that I'm not super dogmatic about it, and occasionally I'll, like, eat a meal that they made if it's not fully vegan, but my thing is if I'm going grocery shopping, I only buy things that are vegan. So if I'm, like, cooking at home, I only eat vegan things. Another exception that I've experienced is if I'm ever traveling in the South, like on a road trip, it's really hard to find vegan foods. And I've gone through times where I'm like so hungry because there's like no options to get vegan food. And so I've eaten non vegan on some road trips in like Virginia because there's no options. And even if I try to eat vegan, I'm like starving and have no energy. So that's how I've done it. And I think a lot of vegan YouTubers are super dogmatic about it, and they act like no vegan ever has been like 97 or 99% vegan. I remember there was this one vegan YouTuber named Kalel, and she made vegan grocery hauls and cooking videos and everything, vegan makeup tutorials. And she made a video once saying that she's 99% vegan, but she uses a razor that has an animal product in it, and maybe 3 times a year eats a candy bar that has like a little bit of dairy in it. So she got so much hate by the vegan community online and on Twitter. And it was so intense that she completely quit veganism because it was basically drilled into her head that if she wasn't 100% of the time, she's not welcome in the community. And this is not how normal vegans are. This is just people online. If you talk to people who are actually vegan, I think a lot of them are like me, where they don't do it 100% of the time. Although now I am like pretty close to 100% of the time. The other day I bought something and it wasn't vegan. It was waffles from Trader Joe's, and I didn't think to check it because I make waffles all the time and they're vegan. So I get back and I think it was like my second time eating them, and I'm like, what? There's egg in this. I'm so mad. So then I found their gluten-free ones, which are also vegan. So if you do go to Trader Joe's, make sure the waffles are vegan. But yeah, I think I do make mistakes sometimes, and over the past 5 years, I wouldn't have been able to keep up with it and be vegan 97, 99% of the time if I'd gone into it saying you have to be perfect. So that's my advice. And I know so many vegan YouTubers and people on Twitter would like freak out over that. You're not a real vegan. You're a murderer. All these things. But I've done so much for the animals and the planet because I've been 97, 99% of the time over the past 5 years. Like I've created so much good, saved so many animals' lives, decreased global warming exponentially. So I hope that's helpful and a good pep talk to anyone who's thinking of changing their diet. You don't have to do 100% of the time. You don't have to be perfect. We're all human. And I definitely think going into the future that there's going to be more and more and more vegan options at grocery stores, vegan options at restaurants, vegan fast food. And it's going to be way easier to be vegan 100% of the time. But in some places in the country and in the world, it's really, really hard to do that. And one thing that motivated me and kind of put it in my head that I don't have to be perfect is that the creator of the animal rights movement, Peter Singer, he talked about in his book that whenever he's traveling, he eats vegetarian rather than vegan because it's so hard to find vegan food. And so the founder of the modern animal rights movement, says it's okay to not be 100% vegan. And I don't know what he would say today about that. Maybe now, because there's more options, he would say he's always vegan. But just the fact that there's like that openness, I think that's so important to spread the message. And actually, I was talking to this priest who's vegan, and he said he was at a Catholic vegan retreat once. And actually, the founder of PETA is a Catholic. So before everyone freaks out about that, he actually left PETA recently because PETA has started doing so. PETA is People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. It's like the biggest in the country animal rights organization for veganism. And obviously, I use their information, if I'm like looking to see if a product is vegan or want to educate myself more. I use a lot of their resources. I think they do amazing work. But recently, they've been using women in basically posing naked for some of their advertisements. And I just think it's not okay to put down women's empowerment as a way to promote veganism. It just seems so messed up. So I'm totally against a lot of their advertisement. And that's why I think that's part of why the Catholic co-founder of PETA left, because it was just getting too extreme with a lot of the advertisements. But it'd be interesting to talk to him and see why he left PETA. I was trying to find him online and I couldn't. He doesn't have like any social media, but yeah, so Catholicism and veganism can totally align. The founder of PETA. And one of the things that motivated him is he was visiting his friend in Canada who worked at a slaughterhouse, and he like went in and was like overwhelmed by how evil it was. So, okay. Jesus wasn't vegan or vegetarian. Let's not make it too saintly. They didn't have factory farms in the first century. I've said in so many videos that I do not have a problem throughout human history with people killing animals for food. The problem is the way they're killing animals for food today in the factory farms is horrific conditions. Joshua says, I'm on meds, and I believe Lizzie is on meds. Different meds work for different people. This is Joshua speaking, not me. I take Seroquel 150 milligrams in the morning and 300 at night, and I take physical health meds for diabetes. So, yeah, I've been medicated on and off since 2015. I've been successfully stayed medicated since 2017 in the summer. So 18, 19, 20. So it'll be like 4 years in August of being medicated. I've been on Lamictal since 2016, and I went on Seroquel in 2018. So I take 300 milligrams of Lamictal at night along with 400 milligrams of Seroquel at night. So I've been on Seroquel and Lamictal for so long. It's so funny when I go to pick up my medication at the pharmacy, sometimes they're like, do you want to talk to the pharmacist about your medicine and side effects? And I'm like, no, I've been on this for 5 years. So it's nice having consistency. I remember when I first was diagnosed and on medicine, it was like every single appointment, I was like changing the dosage or like it wasn't working and it was so awful. But eventually, I hope this is empowering to anyone with a mental illness. Eventually, you get to a point where you get on the right medication dosage and you're not constantly changing. Jacob says, I'm engaged to a very sweet, God-fearing woman I met during college years. She is the only woman I've dated. Isn't that so romantic? That's why it's okay if you've been single for a long time, because it's so cool if the first person you're with is the person you marry. And obviously, most people aren't like that, but I just think it's sweet if you haven't been with like a ton of people. Bruno, you should be a model. So I think I could have been because I'm 5'8". I don't really show off my body on here because it's just like you guys are seeing my face on YouTube. But I do have a very like model-like body. I would say going into my 20s, I'm like too curvy now. I don't think I would be accepted, but definitely later in my teenage years, I definitely have the model body. So I could have done it. I really wanted to in high school, and I tried to get my mom to let me because we lived pretty close to Miami, which Miami, New York, and LA have the biggest modeling agencies there. But my mom wanted me to focus on school and not my looks. So she wouldn't let me. And I think it would have been a fun side job to do in high school and college, but didn't happen. And by the time I was off on my own, it was like way too late to start. You have to start when you're in your teenage years. So obviously not everyone, but most models. Okay. 5 Kai Dragon, what do you think are the reasons that there is a priest shortage right now? I think it's related to what I was talking about earlier, how our country is obsessed with romantic relationships, and so all religious life is down, not just the priesthood. Monks and nuns are way down too. I also think it's because Catholicism is declining in the country majorly since like the 1970s, and I think a lot of it has to do with wars that were going on at the time and the sexual freedom. What am I thinking? What is it called? The 1960s was the sexual revolution. The sexual revolution, which really changed the way we view relationships. And there were just so many things going on in the 60s and the 70s. And so, because of that, Catholicism has declined. And so, also because birth control is used more in the country as a whole, even Catholic families use birth control, so they're having way less children, and so it just makes sense that if you're having less children, less will choose to become part of the priesthood. And I was watching a video by Bishop Barron, or maybe it was Breaking in the Habit, and I think it was Breaking in the Habit. It was one of them, I don't remember who, but they were talking about how the decline in Catholicism was not caused by Vatican II, and they were, I mean, it's pretty obvious, you learned this in like high school or middle school, how correlation does not mean causation. But they were talking about how so many huge factors were decreasing like all religion in the US around 1960s to like today. So I think that's a huge part of it. It's not like, oh, Vatican II is evil. Like, I think Vatican II did a lot. Like, I think it would be a lot worse Catholicism in the country if it weren't for Vatican II. Joshua says it was Breaking in the Habit. Okay, it was Breaking in the Habits video. Thank you. I love how you guys are so obsessed. So, one of my best friends texted me the other day, and he got recommended a video by Breaking in the Habit, and it was like 15 minutes of completely useless Catholic trivia, and he said it showed up in his recommended. He texted it to me. I was like, yay! Maybe he is looking into Catholicism, but probably not. Okay. John Price is the church against the death penalty. Yes, if you read the catechism, it's against the death penalty. So a lot of people, this is like one of the most controversial things in American Catholicism is the church's view on the death penalty. So people have literally made me feel gaslighted about this issue because I've learned about it and how the church is currently against it, and people are like, absolutely not. So the past 3 popes, Pope John Paul II, Pope Benedict XVI, and Pope Francis, have all been outspoken against the death penalty. And a lot of people are uncomfortable with this who are pro-death penalty because in the past the church has been pro-death penalty. So the problem is that the criminal justice system around the world has completely changed in the past like 50 years. And so that's why in our current culture, the death penalty is unjust. It's not like it changed, it's because the way the death penalty is and the way the criminal justice system is has completely changed. And so that's why we have the church, right? That's why we have the pope and the bishops and the teaching magisterium, because there are so many changes throughout the millennium and throughout the centuries that we have to have church authority in charge who will bring the gospel into the current age. And so there are some things that seem to change. Like another example is the church's view on in vitro fertilization or on environmentalism. Like, we didn't have global warming in the Middle Ages. We didn't have in vitro fertilization with the church fathers. And so there's so many new issues that come up. And I think since the criminal justice system, a lot of people just aren't educated on how much it has changed. And so because of that, a lot of people are confused. I personally took a prisons class in college, and I also did a ton of research on the criminal justice system in high school on the debate team. And so I'm super informed on how the criminal justice system has completely changed and globally. So I'm really against the death penalty. And there's actually an organization, I was reading about them. I'm going to start watching this. So there's a series on Netflix about the Innocence Project, which is a national organization, which is a lot of attorneys are working pro bono, and they're helping people who are on death row or just in jail for huge sentences. They're helping people get out of jail and off of death row who didn't even commit the crimes. Like, there are so many people who are in prison right now who newer DNA evidence completely exonerates them. So, because there are so many people on death row who didn't commit the crimes, it just for me is like, it's also more expensive. So this is just talking about the US politically, not the church's view on it. These are reasons that I have always been against the death penalty. Maybe not always, but like starting in high school when I started forming my view on things like this. But it's actually more expensive to put people to death because of all the trials that have to happen and the drugs that are used to kill them. It's way more expensive to kill people than to keep them in jail for life. And so my thing is, why are we wasting taxpayers' money by killing people when we can just keep them in jail for life? Like, that angers me so much that they're using our budget that could be going towards education or healthcare, poverty relief in our country. It's going towards killing people. And then the fact that there are so many people who have been killed on death row who didn't commit the crimes, that for me, it's something called, I'm going to read the exact quote because I have not studied this since college, but okay, so this is called the Blackstone Principle or the Blackstone Ratio. So it was part of European and US criminal justice. So what it says is, it is better than that 10 guilty persons escape than that one innocent suffer. I'll read that again. It is better that 10 guilty persons escape than that one innocent suffer. So this was introduced by William Blackstone in Commentaries on the Law of England in the late 18th century. So it was really formative in the way the US runs the justice system and was set up. So maybe that's just like some super European thing. That's part of the way I think about this. But just the fact that you could be wrong about the person committing the crime. And I really recommend you look up the Innocence Project. You can follow them on Instagram. They share so many stories. And they have a Netflix show. Let me see what the exact name is for it. Innocence Project Netflix. This is the next thing I'm going to watch on Netflix. So, okay, it's called The Innocence Files. It was released on April 15th. That does not make sense because I heard about it in like January. Anyways, it's on Netflix right now. It's streaming. So it is The Innocence Files, and it goes in depth on some of these stories where the attorneys are exonerating people who didn't even commit the crimes. And I think this will become less of an issue going into the future. Like, in the 22nd century, I don't think there will be much need for the Innocence Project organization. But because we have cases from like decades ago, before we had DNA information, which can prove crimes or not, now we're looking back at cases from like 30 years ago, and they still have all the parts of the crime. You know what I mean? Like, they still have the evidence of the crime and what they used for the trial and everything. So they can retest some of the materials, and they can be like, oh, wow, the actual fingerprint on the murder weapon is totally different from the person who's in jail for it. So I literally started crying a couple nights ago because I was reading on Instagram the stories of these people, and it should have been a happy thing because it was talking about people freed from prison, but it was people who'd been in jail for like 20, 30 years who didn't commit the crimes. And it's just like horrific. Like your entire life you lose when you're in prison. It's like you're away from your family, you're not able to pursue a career and education. It's just like horrific. So I definitely recommend donating to the Innocence Project if you want to donate to a nonprofit. Besides donating to my parish, I give to the Innocence Project and International Justice Mission and Good Counsel Homes, which I randomly attend like a virtual speaking event with Catherine Hadro, who is part of EWTN. She runs Pro Life Weekly. So she was doing like a speaking event online at Good Counsel Homes, and it's actually in New Jersey. It's an organization that has like multiple homes around the state, and they let pregnant women stay there who were kicked out of their homes or broken up with when they found out they were pregnant. And so it's a pro-life organization that actually does something about abortion. A lot of people claim that pro-life people just want to help the fetus and want to ditch the mom and ditch the baby once it's born. But there actually are a ton of Catholic homes around the country that take in women who are pregnant who have nowhere else to go. And so this is the one that I'm mainly educated on, but in like every major city, you'll find Catholic homes like this. And so I donate to Good Counsel Homes because they host like dozens of women, and they keep them even after the baby is born for like years after they're able to stay and figure out, go back to school and get a job and work on their careers while being able to live in the place. And there's so many volunteers who help feed them and babysit their children and everything. So it's so amazing. It's like the best pro-life ever. And I think in the abortion debate, a lot of pro-choice people like don't even try to see what the church is doing in helping people who are in the situation. Like Catholics are doing so much to help women. And it's not just the homes, it's a lot of free medical care and giving so many supplies and money towards women who are single moms. So, yeah. Travis says, are you answering questions tonight? Yes, I was answering a question very, very long-winded about the Catholic view on capital punishment, and that's what I've been talking about for the past like 4 minutes. But that was from a question. Okay, let's see. A lot of people listen to this comment from a guy named Pacho Villa. Bipolar disorder is a demon. I had a demon before. Once my demon was cast out, no more bipolar disorder. So the vast majority of people who have bipolar symptoms, it's just they have the genetic makeup, they have enough genes to be diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and medication, like in the majority of people, completely solves it. Obviously, it's still hard. Obviously, you still have breakthrough episodes and symptoms, and life is really hard if you have a chronic illness like bipolar disorder and other mental illnesses. It's so hard. But medication gets rid of the majority of the symptoms. So a lot of people kind of look on my condition and are like, oh, she needs to be healed. Like, she needs to be helped. But people don't understand that, like, I am healed and I'm helped by my medication. Like, it gets rid of the horrible symptoms. So I don't need to be I don't need to have a demon come out of me. Okay, Travis says, question. I just had a back and forth with my aunt who has left the Catholic Church. She believes the Pope will baptize aliens and Catholics worship Mary. Any suggestions on how to respond? Sorry, I'm laughing. The Pope will baptize aliens? Where is that coming? I've never heard that before. And I get so many Protestant comments. So many Protestants in my life have never heard that before. But what I say is that Catholics do not worship Mary. What I say is that it's a mortal sin in Catholicism to worship Mary. So I just make it really clear that our church authority, our church documents, which like of all the types of Christianity, we have the absolute most documents and writings and authority and people who are teaching our rules. And so amidst all of that, it's a mortal sin to worship Mary or anyone else besides God. So that's what I always say. And our whole mortal sin system sounds so intense to people who are not Catholic. And so they're like, what? It's a mortal sin. So that's what I always do. And Travis says she thinks there's a satellite in Arizona. Interesting. Yeah, and I think we also just need to pray for these people because a lot of things could be solved with like what people are confused about in conversations and them asking questions to Catholics. And so if they just want to go on and rant about why they hate Catholicism, but they're not willing to ask a question and ask someone who is Catholic what they believe and why they believe in it, you really can't help the situation by just having a conversation. Like they have to be open and asking questions and willing to listen. And so I think people in that situation, we just need to pray for them. Zadog8 says, my ex-wife was bipolar. She also is Catholic. She consulted tarot cards, numerology, witchcraft, entryway to demons. That's really, really, really intense. All of that is not okay in Catholicism. Okay, Hive says, I think the dogma around mortal sin is kind of off-putting. It's odd to me that if you masturbate or something and die before you repent, you go to hell. So I made an entire video talking about pornography and masturbation and the Catholic theology on that. And I was reading the catechism in my video, and it's actually very merciful. And it talks about how for a lot of people, it's an addiction watching porn and masturbating. And so because of that, it's very merciful with God's judgment on the issue. For something to be a mortal sin, you have to be in completely the right mind. You can't be addicted to something. You have to be aware that it is a sin. And so I think in a lot of situations with porn use, it is an addiction. And so it'd be kind of the same way, like if someone is sinning because they're on heroin and they're high, that's not, I mean, I don't like saying that something 100% isn't or is a mortal sin because that's up to God. Like my judgment obviously is not enough. And like even priests in confession, they can't say like 100% like that was or wasn't a mortal sin. But if there's an addiction element going on, it's way less likely to be a mortal sin because you don't have your full willpower, which is required for something to be a mortal sin. So I'm not at all saying porn addiction is fine, go at it. I'm not saying that at all. I think we should take that very seriously. And there's so many organizations to stop porn. Covenant Eyes is a really good example. They sponsored one of my videos once. I really like what they're doing. And Matt Fradd is a really good person if you're wanting to quit porn, quit masturbation. He has done so many podcasts and videos, books on the topic. And so I think there are so many resources available that are Catholic that help if you're in that situation. So definitely take it really seriously, but also understand that if there's an addiction in place. And it's similar to bipolar disorder. Like there's certain things like, for example, cheating on a spouse, which is awful, but adultery, if someone's in a manic episode and they commit adultery, in some of those situations, it's not a sin because they weren't in the right mind in the situation. And so it's really important that to not say, not my priest is like on me about this, to not say like that's a mortal sin, but to say grave matter. Because it's not up to us to judge if something is a mortal sin. And so when talking about masturbation, you can say masturbation is grave matter. Because every time something is grave matter doesn't necessarily mean it's a mortal sin. Mariana, what are your thoughts on feminism as a Catholic? So I always identified as a feminist growing up, and I sometimes still do. I think the problem is the way we define feminism. It's so different. For example, a lot of modern feminists in 2021 would say that if you're not pro-choice, you're not a feminist. So I think most feminist organizations and most outspoken feminists would say I'm not a feminist because I'm pro-life. And so that's just one example where there's certain changes in the definition of feminism that have happened with third wave feminism, and maybe now we're in fourth wave feminism. So as opposed to second and first wave feminism, where they were actually pro-life, the founders of the feminist movement. So I think I've strayed away from saying I'm a feminist just because a lot of people have extreme definitions of it. And I think if you ask the average person, they're not going to be fourth wave feminism having a lot of extreme views. So that's why I just don't use the phrase anymore, because a lot of people will associate it with certain things. I don't understand your comment, Joshua. Is that like a pop culture reference? I don't know what that is. Heather says, anyone here, can long temporary separation of spouses be wrong even if no divorce? I'm trying to think. I feel like there was a double negative in that sentence. Okay, I'm gonna phrase it like this. It is okay to have temporary separation of spouses that is long in Catholicism. So obviously, it's legally you can also divorce if there's a situation where it's an abusive marriage, and for the sake of the wife and the children, they need to be separated from the husband. That's totally okay. And a lot of times, civil divorce is necessary to protect whoever the abused party is from the abuser. Also, husbands can be abused by wives as well. It can happen to either gender. So it's okay, but you're not allowed to remarry. So that's the only thing. And this is actually a big thing when people are converting into Catholicism. If they're currently on like a second or third marriage and they've been married before, you have to stop having sex in your current marriage, or you could prove that one of the previous marriages wasn't legit. So, like, if it wasn't a Catholic wedding, if it was in a courthouse, a lot of times that's not considered a valid marriage. And so you're not on your second or third marriage because the first marriage wasn't even marriage. So then you would be able to have sex with your partner. There are situations where someone's wanting to become Catholic and they have children with like a second marriage and they're not allowed to have sex. So obviously that's not that many situations, but it does sometimes come up. And I think this is such a difficult topic just because there's such a high divorce culture in our country. So many people get divorced. So, and I'm really proud of Catholicism, where so many Protestant churches are okay with divorce and remarriage, and Catholicism is standing strong. Jesus preached about this, and he said that divorce is not okay in Christianity, and so many churches have gone against that and accepted divorce as okay. And I also want to say something. So one of the Churches of Christ, which is the denomination I grew up in, they actually had a thing that they said that if someone is divorced and wants to be part of the church, they have to go back to that first marriage and get back together with the person who they were divorced from. So Catholicism is not saying that. They're saying if you've been remarried and you have children with your current partner, you do not have to leave that partner and go back with your previous spouse. You're allowed to stay in the same home and raise your children together. So I think it's a very merciful view, and it makes sure that the kids are taken care of in the situation. Travis says, question, what can I learn do moving forward the next time I'm in the conversation with my aunt? So I know a lot of people, whenever you say prayer, it's like a cop out and not a good answer. But when I'm having hard conversations with people, I pray in the middle of the conversation. Obviously, I'm still listening and thinking of my response, but I just pray in the moment that the person will be open-minded and God's truth will be able to speak to the person's heart. And so I recommend that. And I just recommend saying that, especially about the worshiping Mary, that it's a mortal sin in Catholicism to worship Mary. And you can even talk about your own experience and say, I do not worship Mary. I only worship God. And all the other Catholics I've ever met do not worship Mary. It's not okay in the church. And so a lot of times that doesn't work. Like my parents think I worship Mary. They still make comments about it. And I've explained everything in such depth and they still think that. And so I think in a lot of situations, it's up to their heart to be softened and it's up to God to help change them. And we just have to be content with people believing lies about our church. And there's honestly nothing we can do. And it's been really hard for me getting comfortable with that because a lot of my friends also think that I worship statues. And it's something that like their mind isn't shifting on, even if me as a Catholic explain to them what we believe. John Price says, I curse the Holy Spirit, am I going to hell? So that's referring to a Bible verse that talks about how cursing the Holy Spirit is an unforgivable sin. So I would go talk to a priest about that and ask them that question and the Catholic interpretation of that Bible verse. But since we aren't sola scriptura, I would guess that, I mean, also, you'd have to define what they mean in that Bible verse about sin against the Holy Spirit. I think the current Protestant way of interpreting it may be completely different than the way that it was taught. Jennifer says, what is your stance on holistic health? I don't know if chakra healing is a useful tool to balance emotions or if it's delving into new age secular practices. So I've talked before about non-Western medicine, like Chinese medicine, and how I found it really helpful to learn, like for example, ginger. I eat ginger and do ginger shots when I'm sick and for health. And that's something that would be considered non-Western Chinese medicine. Whereas in the US, we would use like antibiotics, is what we use for everything. So I'm not sure what, I honestly don't know what chakra is. Why don't we do a quick Google search and see what this is? Neuropathic medication. Plant spirit medicine? No! That seems wrong. Okay, I would say totally not okay, but I don't know 100%. Oh, it's Buddhist medication or Hinduism. Hinduism and Buddhism. The modern Western chakra system arose starting in the 1880s, followed by Sir John Woodruff's book The Serpent Power and Charles Ludberdy's The Chakras, which introduced the 7 rainbow colors for the chakras. And then it's related to alchemy, astrology, homeopathy, Kabbalah, and tarot. So I would totally avoid that because if it's associated with Kabbalah and astrology and tarot cards, that's like clearly against Catholicism. Thomas Cern says it's forbidden for Catholics. Yeah, totally not okay. Fairy Princess chakra stuff is new age. Yeah, new age has to do with a lot of paganism and all of that is not okay as Catholics. I mean, I really like how the Catholic Church is very black and white about that. It's not something that like, I wonder what the church thinks about that. Like it's very clearly against it. Okay, so I've been live streaming for almost 2 hours. It's been so much fun. Make sure to thumbs up the video and like the video before the live stream ends to support my channel. It really helps with the YouTube demographics and sending out the video to everyone once the live stream is uploaded to my channel as a video. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!